Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Birds. Fantasy basketball is right around the corner. I got my top 20 player rankings. Gonna go into detail on how I'm favoring these guys in points versus category leagues. But let's not waste your time. My top 20 fantasy basketball rankings for 2023. Should be absolutely no surprise. Nikola Jokic, the number one player in every single league you will play in this season. Jokic is a fantasy basketball player made in a lab somewhere. He does it all: points, rebounds, assists, threes, steals, blocks. If you have the number one pick, do not hesitate. Nikola Jokic, the two-time MVP, NBA Finals champion, is the number one player in fantasy basketball. Number two, in a clear tier below Jokic, I have Luka Doncic. A guy averaged 32, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, high field goal percentage, going to give you some threes. However, the free throw percentage is not as high as you would expect with a player like Doncic. So in category leagues, if you are to draft Doncic in the first round, keep that in mind. That free throw percentage is something you might want to look into punting as you go throughout your drafts. But from what he's able to do, from rebounding to facilitating and scoring in Dallas, even with Kyrie Irving when we saw them together, going to be a team that can't really stop anybody, so they're going to have to score a lot of points, keep the ball moving. I like Luka Doncic, as he's been proven to be a great fantasy basketball player. My number three player is going to be Joel Embiid, the current NBA MVP from last season. If I was going to be given a 70-plus games played from Embiid in 2023, he'd probably be my number two player, but there is more of an injury risk with Embiid given his size and frame. But a guy averaging 33, 10, nearly 2 blocks with such a high field goal and free throw percentage for a center, also giving you great three-point numbers from that position. Embiid is clearly a top 3 player. And like I said, on a per game basis, probably the second best player in fantasy. But the expected games played won't be as high as a Luka Doncic, in my opinion. My next player in the same tier as these other two guys, Giannis Antetokounmpo, power forward for the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis is going to be much better in your points leagues, but in category leagues, he's not only killing you with the free throw percentage, last year at around 64% from the charity stripe, but also the three-pointers not going to be as high as some of the other guys that we've already listed. So that's why I'm bumping him down. In category leagues, you might want to be even further down this list on Giannis, unless, like with Luka Doncic, you want to commit to punting that free throw category. Because with your first overall pick, if you're going to go with a guy shooting below 70%, it's going to be hard to recover from that throughout the draft unless you specifically go for that. So Giannis, definitely a guy, if you're punting free throws, I'm very okay with drafting him this high, and especially in points leagues where free throw percentage is not a factor. I'm excited to get Giannis in this tier. My third tier, right under this top 4 players, I'm going with Jason Tatum, entering the prime of his career in Boston. Celtics shifting their starting lineup a bit. Marcus Smart no longer on the team. They bring in Kristaps Porzingis. So Tatum could have even more of a role as a ball handler on this team, next to a newly signed Jaylen Brown to that max contract. Tatum, a guy who's available on most nights, averaging 30 points, getting nearly 9 rebounds, 5 assists to go along with over 3 threes made per game, while not sacrificing his field goal percentage, a little bit under 47% from the field and a high 85% free throw percentage. Jason Tatum looking to become a top 5 player in the NBA. In fantasy basketball, I'm very excited in the middle rounds if you can't get these top 4 guys, leading my way in tier 3. Just outside my top 5 players, I have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at the number 6 spot. A category league monster with what he's able to do on the defensive side of the ball. A steal and a half per game to go along with a block per game from the shooting guard position. Pretty phenomenal stats to go along with some very high percentages, over 50% from the floor and 90% from the free throw line. Such a versatile player in category leagues you can really build around. The three-pointers made not as high as you would expect from a scorer like Shai, but I expect him to get that number over 1 3 per made this season. He was a tick under it last year. We're able to see some solid progression in that category. He could be a league winner in category leagues in the middle of the first round. But in your standard points leagues, he's still averaging 32 points a game, 5 assists, 5 rebounds. A very versatile player you can build around, especially at a weak shooting guard position in fantasy basketball. Similar to Shai, I got Tyrese Halliburton right behind him. Now, he's not the scorer that Gilgeous-Alexander is, only averaging around 20 points a game last season, but I expect that to kick up a notch this upcoming year. But he's able to give you double-digit assist numbers for a guy with shooting guard eligibility who, unlike Shai, is able to get 3 three-pointers per game in category leagues. So a guy I really like in category leagues, but in points leagues, you can knock him down a tad given the scoring isn't going to be as high as the guys on this list above him and some of the guys below him we'll talk about in a second. My number 8 player is going to be Anthony Davis. Probably move him in the tier above if he was going to stay healthy. However, we've seen Anthony Davis. It's not like we're predicting injuries here. Consistently throughout his career, dating back to his time in New Orleans, he's getting hurt nearly every single season. for a pretty sizable chunk of the year. On a per game basis, I love Anthony Davis. In leagues where you only play one game per week, you pick that game. Love Davis even more. But over the stretch of an entire season, we expect him to miss at least 2 to 3 weeks to go along with some rest days added in. So that's the only reason we have Davis this low. But on a per game basis, I do not mind shooting him up the rankings, considering you're going to get 26 and 12 with a steal and 2 blocks per game. Such a defensive anchor is limited by the 3-ball. The numbers have actually decreased over his career, so something you have to consider if you're drafting him in the first round of category leagues, punting that 3-point number. But overall, when healthy, Davis is a top 6 player in fantasy basketball. Right behind Davis, Damian Lillard, a guy who's run into some injury problems the last couple of years of his career. But at this stage, I still love Damian Lillard given what he's going to do scoring-wise. Assist numbers have been increasing over the years, 7 assists last season. He stays in Portland, goes to Miami on this, whatever team it is. Damian Lillard is going to contribute in fantasy, be a solid player, give you those 4 threes per game made. Very crucial statistic. Basically giving you such an advantage in those category leagues with the free throw percentage. I like Damian Lillard a lot. Not worried about those injuries that he's had to deal with. Steph Curry, next player off my list. Very similar to Lillard, but he's 2 years older, so I'm kind of taking that into account. I expect the numbers to be on a slight decline as he continues to age in the NBA, but still making 5 threes a game last year with very similar numbers to Lillard, 30 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists, and of course those high free throw numbers and free goal percentage, even with the high three-pointers attempted for Curry. I'm not worried about Chris Paul being added onto this team. 37, 38-year-old Chris Paul we've seen is not the same player he was at the point guard position. So Curry, not a guy I'm worried about. My number 11 player is going to be Domantas Sabonis. This is more for points leagues. Sabonis is going to take a hit in your category leagues. Slide him down probably 5 or 6 spots since he's getting under half 3-point made per game and also shooting right below 75% from the free throw line. But in your points leagues, very good counting statistics from him. 19 points, 12 rebounds, and 7 assists from the power forward center position, doing things like Jokic, obviously nowhere near to the extent of Jokic. That's why he's the number 1 player, but kind of similar to the fact that he's be able to give you the scoring, the rebounding, and a very high assist number from that center position. So in points leagues, love Sabonis, but in category leagues, the low defensive numbers with the steals and blocks to go along with the 3-pointers made. The high field goal percentage isn't enough to carry him, but right here at number 11, I think is a good spot in points league settings. Right behind Sabonis, I'm going with Trae Young. I think people are disrespecting Young a little bit in this stage in his career, hitting him as a guy who's relying on drawing fouls and getting to the free throw line. I think Young is a very crafty and stable player in the NBA. His ability to stay available on a night-to-night basis, fight through injuries, very impressive, especially in today's NBA when guys are sitting a pretty consistent amount. So for a guy who's going to give you over 25 points a game, double-digit assist numbers, and shoot close to 90% from the free throw line, definitely something in a points league I'm looking into with the clear understanding that the block numbers and the field goal percentage right over 40%, pretty poor efficiency there. So drafting him in your category in rotisserie leagues, you're going to have to keep that in mind. But if we're just going on straight points and assists with the 3-pointers made, Trae Young is definitely one of my favorite players at the end of your first round to keep an eye on. A player very similar to Trae Young number-wise, doing a lot of scoring and assisting. However, LaMelo Ball's rebound numbers and actually 3-point made numbers are going to be pretty significantly better than Trae Young. In addition, the steal numbers are elite for LaMelo Ball, over a steal and a half per game. You'd like to see his block numbers be a little bit better than 0.3 per game, given he's a 6'8" point guard. But the 41% field goal percentage for LaMelo Ball really hindering from becoming a fantasy basketball superstar. In leagues that don't account for field goal percentage, LaMelo Ball could be a very valuable pick given some of the rankings that are dropping Ball due to that percentage. But poor field goal percentage and the injury history from LaMelo Ball is really the only thing to worry about with him in Charlotte. My 14th player is going to be Anthony Edwards, a guy who we've seen for the FIBA national team doing very well in that tournament. Ant-Man looking to become a superstar in the NBA this upcoming season, cementing himself above Karl Anthony Towns on that Timberwolves team. While the 2022 numbers were under 25 points, 6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists, as he got more comfortable later on in the season, his numbers were actually closer to 30 points a game, and I expect Edwards to make that next leap this upcoming year. In the middle of the second round in your points leagues, I think he's a great pick, but Edwards definitely has a chance to leap into the first round in next year's rankings if he's going to continue to improve like he's shown the past 2 seasons in Minnesota. Now, I have Kevin Durant ranked at number 15. This could be absolute steal in your fantasy basketball drafts if he's able to stay healthy for a majority of the season. We've seen Durant's injury become a problem as he's gotten older in the NBA, missing some pretty significant time the last couple of seasons. However, if you're willing to roll the dice on Durant that he stays healthy for 65 to 70 games this upcoming year, this could be a league-winning player at the back end of your second round. For a guy who got 30 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, nearly a steal and a block and a half per game, to go along with elite field goal percentage and free throw line percentage, I personally think I'm a little low on Durant here on a Phoenix team that's going to rely so heavily on Beal, Booker, and Durant to score and carry this team with a very weak bench. With some guys similar in this tier that have injury concerns right around him, Durant, I think, is a guy you can go get in the end of the first round and be very happy with the production you're going to see if he's able to stay healthy. At number 16, in a tier below, I have Kyrie Irving. In your category leagues, you could probably shoot him up these rankings, given he's a very overperforming player on the defensive side of the ball with his steal and block numbers for his size. A player, while in category leagues, really impresses in fantasy basketball with the three-point numbers to go along with a high field goal and free throw percentage. Still a very consistent player in your points leagues. Even with Luka Doncic, we saw they were able to play together. And like we talked about with Doncic, this is a Dallas team that's not going to be able to stop anybody on defense. So they're going to consistently have to outscore teams, which aids very favorably to this fantasy basketball duo of Irving and Doncic in the first 2 rounds. I'm not projecting Kyrie's numbers to take a dip alongside Luka in Dallas. I'm ecstatic to get him in category leagues and still very happy to get him in the second round of your points leagues. Next, I have LeBron James. Kind of low, if I'm going to be honest, the lowest I've had LeBron in my rankings in quite some time. But he's 38 years old. Something we haven't seen any sort of fantasy production from this age probably ever. But still, how great he was last year, even if his numbers do decline, he's still going to be a great fantasy player on a per-game basis. Now, we're going to expect him to sit games throughout the season to keep him fresh for the longevity of the year and maybe a playoff push for the Lakers. On a per-game basis, he's probably a top 12 player. But over the course of a season, I'm not expecting him to play as many games with some scheduled rest days for a guy entering age 38 season. The only reason we have LeBron James this low. Next, I have Donovan Mitchell. Not much to be said here. Outperformed his fantasy basketball rankings last year alongside Darius Garland. We thought those guys were going to eat into each other's value a little bit. Didn't end up happening. Mitchell definitely a very profitable fantasy basketball pick last season, and we expect this year to continue here in the late second round. Similar situation with Devin Booker. Now the points may take a hit due to the fact that he's got to share the scoring load with Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal, and DeAndre Ayton. But I think he's going to make up for that with some of his facilitating. He's going to be relied upon with Chris Paul no longer running this offense. So I am not shying away from Booker, even with the addition of Bradley Beal. He's going to eat up a sizable chunk of the scoring in this Phoenix team. I'm not worried about Booker. Going to have a high usage rate in this offense. Still a great player. To end it at number 20, I have James Harden taking a pretty sizable fall from where I had him in my rankings last year, a top 10 player. But he's 34 years old. We've kind of seen his numbers take a slight decrease scoring-wise as he's gotten older. This 76ers team is going to rely and revolve around Joel Embiid. With Tyrese Maxey maybe taking another step forward. Harden's definitely not someone I'm completely fading in fantasy, but I do expect those numbers to take a dip from where they were. 21 points a game last year, 10 assists. We kind of saw, especially in the playoffs, the numbers were pretty much under 20 points a game pretty consistently. This isn't the Houston James Harden. This isn't the Brooklyn James Harden. As he's gotten older, the numbers and efficiency have decreased. So that's why I got him at number 20 in my rankings when he was a top 10 player last season. That's going to do it. Those are my top 20 player rankings in fantasy basketball 2023. Let me know what y'all think. Who you guys have much higher in these rankings or much lower, and any guys that I didn't mention that should have been in this top 20 rankings, let me know in the comment section. Hit the like and subscribe. We're going to be doing more fantasy basketball as the season ramps up. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you guys next week with another episode of the Fantasy Birds.